Hey, welcome to this short film. My name is Tyler and I want to cut right to the chase. My goal for this short film is to help you with two objectives. One, I want to show you how you can increase your income with property to £10,000 per month and above in the next 90 to 180 days. The second objective, once we've achieved that, is I want to show you the roadmap to building a 7-figure property portfolio in the next 12 to 36 months by understanding how to raise finance from private investors and how to deploy that money into these property deals where you can build a portfolio and ultimately build the foundations for long-term wealth. Now, before we go any further, I just want to make the point that property and property investment requires serious determination to be successful. It requires significant work ethic. It comes with a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, and a lot of responsibility. And so if you're looking to get rich quick, I politely ask you to close this window and leave this because this video is not going to be for you. But if you're someone that is willing to play a long-term game, is willing to put in the work to achieve your goals, then I can help. If this is the first time you've stumbled across me and stumbled across my content, my name is Tyler Newman. I'm a property entrepreneur and I own 3 different property businesses. First of all, I own a property company called Newman Rose Property Group with my business partner, Rosie Cassidy. And we are property developers, building beautiful sites across the country. We're now currently building £8.5 to £9 million worth of property with a further £35 to £45 million worth of property in the pipeline, at just 25 years old. My second property business is Luxury Property Partners. This is a luxury real estate agency business with another business partner. And so with that business, we specialize in the marketing and sale of high-end and luxury homes. I have a team of countless agents where we sell anything from £1 million to £20 million plus properties. And thirdly, I'm the founder of Property Ed or propertyeducation.co.uk, a property education company where we help aspiring and existing property investors and property developers grow their business. Now, my mission on this short film is just to provide and deliver as much value as possible. This is not going to be one of those long drawn out sales pitches, and I take pride in how transparent we are. So if at any point throughout this short film you'd like to check out any of our 2 online mastermind programs, there's going to be a link around this video somewhere for you to book in a call with my team and find out more about our program. Now, my property journey first started at 17 years old. Despite growing up in a family where my family business was a estate agency, I actually knew very little about property. The benefit I did have is I was exposed to entrepreneurship. My parents are very entrepreneurial, and having a couple of businesses growing up while I was in school, I had that itch to go out and make something of myself. And so when I was 17, I made the decision I didn't want to go to university. Just at the time with my ambition, it just didn't quite make sense to me. But I saw a Facebook ad for a free property training, just like the one you might be watching now. And I booked myself on, and it was at the Cumberland Hotel here in London, now the Hard Rock Hotel, just at the top of Park Lane in Marble Arch. And it was the first time in my life I was kind of exposed to the exciting prospect that is property and creating wealth through property investing. Now, I attended that seminar and I had some money saved up, and I just thought the best investment I could make at the time was to invest in myself, and went on a couple of courses. And then 12 months later, I managed to do my first property deal. The reason it took 12 months is because I made every mistake in the book when it comes to trying to find deals. I had a few limiting beliefs, but that first deal I did was the most powerful deal. It was a property in Coventry I purchased for just over £80,000. I spent about £20,000 on refurbishments, and I sold it for a £26,000 profit. And it was the most life-changing moments in my career. Now, at the time, I actually only had £8,000 of my own money that I put into that deal. The refurbishment I managed to do on credit cards, living paycheck to paycheck, where I get paid at the end of each month, working as a commission-only estate agent at the time. I'd have my paycheck come in, and then I'd use that money to pay some of the trades. I borrowed money on loan agreements from some friends, family, and I really had to become resourceful. But I knew that I'd found such a good deal that I had to find the money to make it work. And I always say to everyone, doing the first deal is always going to be the most important. It's often going to be the hardest. It's going to take the longest. It's where you're going to take the most mistakes, and most of the value you do in your first deal is going to be in the lessons you learn, not the money you make. But for me, it was such an empowering experience because I knew if I could do it once, I could do it again, and I could do it bigger. Fast forward to now where we're building, like I say, we've got a development pipeline of tens of millions of pounds, and the numbers we talk about are significantly higher. But had I not made that decision to start back then, there's absolutely no way I'd be where I am now. And I'm very fortunate that property has allowed me to live the lifestyle I always dreamed of. You know, if you check out my YouTube channel, you've seen that I bought the car of my dreams. I've got the lifestyle that I always dreamt about. But I'm at a point now where, for me, you know, I just love playing the game. My biggest passion is growing the businesses, and that's the only thing that excites me. And so if you're someone that is hyper ambitious like me, then I can assure you this video is for you. Before we dive into the training, I just want to make it absolutely clear who this short film is for, you know, just so you can assess that you're in the right room. The first type of person that this video is for is anyone that is currently an employee in a job where you're trading your time for money, and you have the ambition to escape what can sometimes feel like a bit of a hamster wheel and start building something for yourself. And so if that's you, you're absolutely in the right place. Secondly, if you consider yourself to be a bit of a rookie in the property world, maybe you've just dipped your toes in this space, you're just starting to learn about all of the different strategies, and like I was, you know, really confused around all of the different options, and you're just not sure what the clear path is to get the success and the results that you like. If that's you, this blueprint and this roadmap I'm going to share with you throughout this video is going to give you the clarity that you need. And thirdly, if you're an existing property investor, maybe you've done 1, 2, or a handful of deals, but you want to understand how to scale by using other people's money and raising private finance, this video is for you, because what I'm going to share with you towards the end of this video is going to allow you to scale and get to that next level. Now, let's dive into the training. If you're here and you're watching this video, it's primarily going to be because of one main reason. You want to learn how to make more money, which I totally get, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But we have to understand, when it comes to making money, there are two different sides to the equation. Firstly, we have increasing our income. And secondly, we have increasing our wealth. And it's important we establish the difference between the two. Now, income is how much you make, whether that's on a monthly or an annual basis. Wealth is how much you have, or really how much you keep. And what's interesting is when you look at whether it's the Sunday Times Rich list, or you look at the Forbes list, and you look at these billionaires that have this huge number next to their name, whether it's 1 billion, 5 billion, 100 billion, that number represents their wealth. It doesn't represent their income. And when it comes to income, you might know people that make 10, 20, 30,000 pounds a month, but their net worth is pretty much close to zero. They could still be broke and living paycheck to paycheck. On the flip side, you might have people that make a pretty menial salary, whether it's 30, 40, or even 50,000 pounds a year, but their net worth is in the hundreds of thousands of pounds. So point being is that actually the correlation between income and wealth has been shown by many, many studies to be very weak. Now think of it like this. Income is like water flowing through a hose, and wealth is the bucket that you're filling up with water from that hose. So if you have a hose that has a strong flow of water, but you're spilling it everywhere and none of it's going in the bucket, then of course you're not going to fill that bucket and you're not going to get wealthy. On the other hand, if you have a hose which is just dripping water drip by drip, but you're getting all of those drips into the bucket, then over a long enough time scale, that bucket is going to fill with water and it's going to create wealth. Now, really, the best situation is where you have a high income, you have a high flow of water through the hose, and you're pouring it all in the bucket. That's what we want to be aiming to do. But with that being said, you know, wouldn't it make sense to focus on increasing our income first? And I want to ask you a question. I want you to think about at this current stage in your life, how much money do you make per month? Now, you don't have to, of course, say it out loud or let me know, but think after you've been paid at the end of the month and you've paid your rent or your mortgage payments, you've made maybe your car payments, you've paid the bills, you've paid for your groceries, how much can you really put away each month and save to invest? You know, it might be £100 a month, it might be 250, it might be £1,000 a month or even more, but have a think. And think what that number is, and then think, how long is it going to take you to save up a meaningful amount of money that you can then invest in property and make a meaningful return that's actually going to be worth your time? So if you think you're going to need 30 to 50,000 pounds to do a property deal, how many months is it going to take you of saving to be able to get into that first deal? It's probably going to take years. For some people, it might even take a decade. And so the purpose of this video, like I explained in the objectives, is I want to show you how you can shrink that time that it takes you to start getting into your property deals. But with that being said, wouldn't it make sense to increase your income first? And that's where I want to talk about step one of what I call the property blueprint. Step one is all about increasing your income. Now, when it comes to property, we've all heard of passive income. And on the other spectrum, we have active income. Active income or earned income refers to when you have to work for your money. Passive income refers to when the money is just paid to you whether you work or not. So in the context of property, that's going to be rental income that's paid by tenants. And think of it as when you're trading your money for time, where with active income, you're trading your time for money on the far scale. So if you're someone that is an employee in a job, you are paid by the hour. You are literally trading your time for money and you receive your paycheck at the end of each month. And therefore, the problem with that, the only way to increase your income is one of two ways. One, you can work longer hours, but we all know that isn't scalable because time is a finite resource and there's only 24 hours in a day. Or the second way is you get a promotion where you're getting paid more within that job. But there's a lot of friction around that, and that is somewhat dependent on other people giving you that promotion. And so the step above that and the way we can escape trading our time for money is by developing a high value skill and building a knowledge base that we can productize and sell as a service or a product. So let me give you some examples. Now, there are 3 examples and 3 strategies I want to share with you for increasing your income with property. Now, we have the rent-to-rent and serviced accommodation business model where you are renting a property from a landlord, you're leasing it typically on a long-term lease, and then you go out and add value to that property. You increase the rental income either by converting it to a HMO or what we call a house of multiple occupation, or you operate that property as serviced accommodation where you service guests on a night-by-night basis that pay a nightly rate to stay there. And your difference is going to be the profit between the revenue that you generate, either as an Airbnb and service accommodation or as a HMO, and then your costs as well as what you're paying to the landlord. Now, with the right properties, you can make anywhere from £700 to £1,200 or even £1,500 profit per month, maybe even more or sometimes even less, depending on the property and where it is in the country. And so it is a great business model. And if you check out my YouTube channel, you'll see an interview I did with one of my close friends, Bradley. He has a service accommodation business, which, in his early 20s generates him between £20,000 and £30,000 profit each month. Don't get me wrong, that's something he's been doing for many, many years, but it is a business model that works. And it's no different to where I live here in London, where you see all these beautiful hotels. They operate the exact same way. These hotels, they don't own the freehold, as in they don't own the building or the land of which the hotel sits on. They are the leaseholder, so they pay a lease every single month, and then they operate the hotel and serve guests on a night-by-night basis. They bring in their revenue, they have all of their costs, they pay their lease, and their profit is whatever's left over. And so it's a very scalable and proven business model. And the economics of making £10,000 per month with serviced accommodation with rent to rent could simply be having 10 units that produce £1,000 profit each month. The second strategy to make £10,000 per month and more with property is through deal sourcing and deal packaging. If you're not familiar with deal packaging, it's simply the process of working with individuals that are cash rich and time poor, that want to invest their cash that they've got into property, but because they're time poor, they don't have the time or even sometimes the knowledge to go out, find property deals, analyze those deals, make appointments with estate agents or sellers, analyze the market and get the deal agreed. And so they would rather pay someone like you to go out and source these deals, and they're happy to pay you a sourcing fee of what could be £3,000 to £5,000 per deal that you find. Now, this is an incredible business model. Like we talked about, this is the process of developing the skill around how to find and identify good property deals, which is a skill and does require knowledge. And as well as that, you need to develop the skill of being able to promote yourself and communicate with these investors and essentially sell your service to them. And then you broker these deals and you get paid your sourcing fee. And so this is a great example of you're not directly trading your time for money because you're not being paid by the hour. Instead, you're being paid in terms of the value that you can provide. You developed a high value skill set where it may only take several hours to go out and find and identify a property deal and do the viewings and communicate with your investors and put a deal together. You're being paid based on the results and the value that you can provide. And that's a very important thing to understand. And so when you get to that point where you can productize this skill and this knowledge that you've learned as a service, it allows you to scale your income a lot easier. Now with deal packaging, you should be charging anywhere from £2,500 to £5,000 per deal, depending on the price of the property or how good the deal is. But if you just source 3 deals per month at a sourcing fee of £3,000, that's over £100,000 per year. And when you set up and run a deal packaging business the right way, £100,000 a year should be a hygiene standard. And as we all know, to make £100,000 a year in a job takes qualifications, decades of work experience, and slave-like hours. And even then, most people don't even get close to £100,000 a year. And the third strategy I want to share with you to get to that £10,000 plus per month mark is by becoming a self-employed estate agent. So as I mentioned, one of my property businesses is Luxury Property Partners, where I have a big team of estate agents working under the brand that either are making 6 figures a year or are on track to make 6 figures per year. Now, this is a new model of estate agency where the agents are commission only, but by getting great results for their clients, charging the right fees, and by being able to take home huge percentages of their fee income that they generate as commission, they're able to earn the significant income that they deserve. And if you'd like to find out more about these 3 strategies in more detail, I've actually put together a completely separate document combined with a training video explaining all of these strategies and all of the skills you need to develop in order to be successful at them. If you'd like me to send you this document, it's incredibly valuable. Head over to Instagram and find me at Tyler Newman. Click follow and drop me a DM with the keyword 10K. And once you've done that, myself or my team will send you the training. And so when it comes to increasing your income, I encourage everyone to set the goal of earning between £10,000 and £20,000 per month. Depending on where you're at in your life, that might sound like a lot of money and more money than you've ever earned before. But with the strategies I've just shared with you, if you can hone in on that craft, if you can develop the skill sets and learn from those people that have done it and got the results that you want, if one person can do it, then so can you. And at £10,000 to £20,000 per month, that income bracket is a really magical point. Because you can live in a great place, whether you rent or whether you buy. You can buy a decent car and you can be like me and you can buy something completely silly, or you can buy a car that is a little bit more sensible. You can also go on great holidays, whether it's every quarter or every year in the summer. You can take your family away as well. And that's another thing, you can look after your family. And lastly, when you're earning that kind of money, you can afford to put away and save a meaningful amount of money that you can invest into something like property that is going to compound over time. Before we go any further, if you're someone that feels like £10,000 per month and above is something that's just never really felt within the realm of possibility for you, something you didn't even think you'd be able to achieve, I want to assure you that it absolutely is possible. If you can believe it to be possible, there's no reason why you can't achieve it. It's not going to be easy, and I don't want to give you the misconception that it is going to be easy, but the process is simple. If you pick the right vehicle, and that could be any of the 3 strategies I've explained with you, and you're prepared to do the work and you can learn from people that have got the success that you want, then there's no reason why you can't get there. And so if that is something that you want to do, I encourage you to just make the decision. Decide, this is the goal I want to achieve, and one way or another, I'm going to get there. Because that's what it starts with. It just starts with the decision to do it. Now let's move on to step 2 of the blueprint, where we focus on building long-term wealth. What we've talked about so far is how we can increase our income, either by selling our time in a job or selling a product or a service. But really, if we want to get wealthy and we want to increase our net worth, that can only be done by buying and owning assets. And so if you do look at the Sunday Times or the Forbes list and see next to these billionaires, this huge number next to them, which is their net worth, that net worth has been accumulated because they've owned assets, either it's property or it's equity within a business that they've built. Jeff Bezos, for example, he is worth hundreds of billions of dollars, not because of the salary or the dividends that he's paid himself, but because of the value of the equity in the business that he's created and he's grown with Amazon.
I own 16% of Amazon. Amazon's worth roughly $1 trillion. That means that what we have built over 20 years, we have built $840 billion of wealth for other people.
Now, property can produce income, and it can produce passive income, which has a lot of value attached to it. But to get to kind of £10,000 to £20,000 a month with just passive income requires a very substantial portfolio. And so I think the mistake a lot of people make is they want to get to that high income levels as passive income from property first, when if we refer back to step 1 of the blueprint, one of the best and most effective ways to increase our income is just transition out of trading our time for money and develop a skill set that we can productize and sell. Now, the reason that we need to buy and own property and build a portfolio to develop long-term wealth is because when we own property, there are various flywheel effects. What do I mean by this? Well, when you own property, there's a few magical things that happen. First of all, you have the capital appreciation. So on average, every year, the property is increasing in value. And over a number of years, that could be 10%, it could be 20%, it could be 30%. It's then producing a rental income each month and each year, which also on average increases in value over time. And then with property, the benefit of property is that you can leverage it with debt. So with every £1 that you want to put forward to buy a property, a bank typically is going to give you £3. So when we put in £1, they give us 3, meaning if we put in 25% of the purchase price, a bank is going to give us 75% as a mortgage. Now that debt against the property, although we're not paying it down as in we're paying down the amount, with a buy-to-let mortgage or a investment mortgage, we're just paying the interest every month. But £100,000 mortgage today versus that same £100,000 mortgage in 10 or 20 years time, in 10 or 20 years time, £100,000 is actually a lot less valuable because of inflation. And if you think back to your grandparents when they bought their first home, they might tell you they bought their first home for £10,000 or £15,000. If you think if they bought that with a mortgage and they got a £5,000 or £10,000 mortgage, obviously that amount of money back then was a pretty significant amount. But because of inflation, the value of that debt has got less and less and less. And the other benefit of leverage is that if you put in 25% of a property's purchase price and you buy, let's say, a £100,000 property with a 75% mortgage, if that property price goes up by 10% over maybe 2 or 3 years, the cash that you've put in, the equity you've put in, has actually increased by 40%, which is the power of leverage. Now, when all of these things happen and the property prices go up and the rental prices go up and the value of the debt goes down, you can then refinance that property to go and buy more. What you see over a long-term time horizon is that your wealth compounds and it creates exponential growth. Now, if you go onto Google Images and you look at Warren Buffett's wealth over his lifetime, you can see that it's an exponential curve. It's the same with the other wealthiest people in the world, whether it's Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. Their growth in wealth isn't linear, it's an exponential curve. And so the reason you want to buy property and build a portfolio is because you want to get to that point, that inflection point where the growth becomes exponential. And now here's the problem. If you want to build a substantial property portfolio, a meaningful size that can produce a significant rental income and increase in value each year, enough that if you were to refinance it, it's going to be a decent chunk of money for you to go and reinvest. To build a portfolio of that size, whether it's 1, 2, 3 million pounds plus, with just your own capital, is going to take a very, very, very long time. For some people, it can take decades and decades. And so how do we solve this problem? How do we fast track the process of building a portfolio that typically can take decades and compress time where we can build a meaningful portfolio in 1, 2, or even just 3 years? Well, in order to do that, you need to learn how to use other people's money. And simply put, this is the process of working with private investors, raising money from private investors, and then going out and understanding how to find great deals and deploy this capital into those deals where you can add value, refinance them, retain this portfolio, and become essentially a financial engineer. and be able to pay your investors back and use this capital to keep growing and growing and growing. And so if this is something you might have heard before, or you're a little bit hesitant about and you're not sure if it's legitimate or if it's just a little bit of a scam, I encourage you to look at some of the biggest and most successful property companies in the world. So if we look at Blackstone, that have a $500 billion property portfolio, they've managed to achieve that because they've raised hundreds of billions of dollars of other people's money from private investors. You look at any of the biggest property developers in the world, some of the most famous ones like Donald Trump, the Candy Brothers, or even some of the biggest house builders in the UK. The reason they've managed to build and scale such huge companies is because they've become masters at raising finance and how to deploy that capital into deals and generate a return over and above their cost of capital. Now, let me elaborate on that. My belief is that property is just a finance game. And if you want to become a successful property investor, you have to be what's called a capital allocator. Now, in business, capital allocation refers to understanding where you allocate capital in your business that's going to generate the highest return. And the best of the best business people and the best of the best property investors in the world, they are just master capital allocators. They know where they can invest money in their businesses and into property deals. They're going to generate the best return. And when it comes to raising money, you just simply raise money at one price where you're paying your investors what could be 6%, 8%, 10%, maybe even 20% per year in some instances. And then you take that money and you put it into deals that generate a return over and above your cost of capital. And by understanding this complex knowledge and the complexities that come around raising finance, which it is a pretty complex topic if it's not taught properly, but once you understand it and you become what I call, and I talked about earlier, a financial engineer, it unlocks this whole different world of property investing and allows you to think in much bigger scale. Because if you want to scale a property business, there are just 3 things that you need to focus on. 1, you need to understand how to find and identify great deals. Because you haven't got good deals, you haven't got a property business. And most people with a bit of training, a bit of guidance can understand how to find great deals and find properties that are for sale. But the second bottleneck you need to figure out is actually how to fund these deals. Because you can have all of the deals in the world in front of you, but if you don't know how to fund them, or you're just relying on using your own capital, you're only going to be able to scale so much. And thirdly, you need to understand how to project manage and deliver these deals for a profit. And so if you want to build a successful property business, those are just the 3 things that you need to focus on: finding and identifying deals, understanding how to fund them, and how to have the right team in place to deliver these deals for a profit. Now, the most important deal you're ever going to do in property is your first deal. And raising finance from your first investor is always going to be the hardest finance you're ever going to raise. Finding your first deal is always going to be the hardest deal you're ever going to find. But doing it is going to be the most powerful, because when you can do it once, you suddenly overcome all of these limiting beliefs you had and all of these fears and all of these stories you were telling yourself as to why you couldn't do it. And then you realize that actually, if I can do it once, and this is the same epiphany I had, you can do it again and you can do it bigger. And so I want to ask the question to you: if you solved the money problem in your property business, if you essentially had access to unlimited funds, how much more exciting would property be? How many more deals could you do? And that's the level of skill set we want to develop you to, because the most successful property investors I know, and even myself with our property business, where now we've raised millions of pounds from private investors, we don't think about here's how much money we have, therefore here's the deals we do. We think here's the deals I want to do, and then I just ask the question, well, who's going to fund them, or how am I going to fund them? Now, I know when it comes to raising finance from private investors, especially if this is the first time you've even thought about it, there's a lot of hesitations that can come with it, a lot of fears that might come to your head, or even a lot of limiting beliefs that might begin to appear. But I can assure you, it's just a skill set that you have to learn. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, why would anyone want to invest in me? I don't have any credibility. I don't know how to find good deals. You might be thinking, well, how do I even find investors? Or I don't know anyone that's got any money. But understanding how to raise finance is a skill that you must develop. And there's 2 different skills you need to learn in order to become successful at raising finance and using other people's money. Firstly, is you need to understand how the money is actually structured. Now, if you had an investor that said to you, hey, I'm going to give you 300, 400, 500,000 pounds tomorrow, which might be more money than you've ever seen in your life, would you know how to actually go out and structure that money effectively and deploy that money in order to generate the highest possible return? Now, you might, but the likelihood is most people I speak to don't. You've got to ask yourself, is it going to be structured as debt? Is it going to be structured as equity? What interest rate can you offer them? What timescales? How is it going to be structured from a legal perspective? Is there going to be security? Are they going to be a director on the limited company and get a share certificate? There's all of these complexities that you need to learn in terms of how do you actually structure the money. The second thing you need to learn is actually how do you actually go out, find investors, or promote yourself and position yourself in a way where investors can find you, and essentially get investors to agree to want to work with you. And so really understanding how to structure the money and the various different capital structures, that's just something that you can learn. And once you've learned that, you've then just got to develop the skill of going out to find and attract investors, which in this day and age, we have the advantage of social media. You can create content, you can promote yourself online, and the distribution of content is greater than it's ever been before. And it's the advantage we have as a generation over the generations before us. So my property company, Newman Rose, we're a great example of this. At this point, we've raised millions of pounds of private investment just from social media alone. And think of how many people that you've kind of connected with on social media, or you've observed on social media that you've never actually met before, but you feel like you've got a relationship with them and you know, like, and trust them, because even though it's in a virtual realm, you spent a lot of time with them watching their content and engaging their content. And simply, that's the blueprint. Step one is you want to focus on increasing your income, escape the trap of trading your time for money, develop a high value skill set and a knowledge base that you can productize and sell as a product or service, whether that is rent to rent and service accommodation, whether that is packaging deals for cash rich and time poor investors, or whether that's becoming a self-employed estate agent where how much you're paid is based on the results that you generate, not the amount of hours you've put into your work. And once you've created an income of 10 to 20,000 pounds plus per month, you can then focus on building a property portfolio and setting the foundations for long-term wealth and creating this compound effect where over a long-term time horizon, 5, 10, 20, 30 years, your wealth can build exponentially and you can live the life that you've always dreamed of. And so at this point in this short film, you've got one of two options. You can go at this alone and try and learn it the hard way over many, many years, make all the mistakes that I've made, or you can learn the proven process. And if you've made the decision that this is something you want to learn, and you want to learn from someone that's done this and is doing this and has got the results that you want, I'd encourage you to book in a call with my team and find out more about our Property Blueprint online mastermind. Now, this call is not going to be a sales call. My team are very well trained and spend a lot of time with me inside my property business as well. And simply our objective is just to look at your current situation, figure out where you are now in terms of your income, in terms of the time you have available and the resources you have available, and then set some goals and map out an action plan to help you get there. And if we think you're a good fit and we can provide sufficient value to you, we'll give you the opportunity to enroll into the mastermind and provide all of the information you need to make a decision. If you have any questions, you can find me on Instagram at Tyler Newman and fire away any questions you have there. And I also encourage you to check out my YouTube channel where you can see all of the content I've produced over the years and learn a little bit more about my journey and what I'm up to on a day-to-day basis. Before I go, I want to remind you that this is not some kind of get-rich-quick scheme. Property, as we know, is something that requires a lot of hard work, a lot of patience, a lot of determination, and like anything worth pursuing in life, is going to be difficult at times. So if you're prepared to play a long-term game, if you're prepared to do the work, I'd love to be a part of your journey. I'd love to be a part of helping you achieve the success that you desire. So please book in a call with my team, and I hope one day we cross paths. I'll see you on the next one.